The journey to becoming yourself is not a straight road, it's a battlefield. Every Sigma male goes through a series of unexpected, often painful stages before he fully understands who he is. Society doesn't prepare him for this. He isn't given a rule book or a mentor to guide him. Instead, he stumbles through confusion, isolation, and brutal self-awareness, all while watching the world operate in a way that makes little sense to him. There was a time when you questioned yourself. Why don't you fit in? Why does small talk feel so pointless? Why do people misunderstand your silence? You tried to blend in, to play the game, but it never felt natural. And that's because it wasn't meant to. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are simply wired differently. While others chase approval, you chase truth. While they get tangled in distractions, you sharpen your mind. You see things for what they are, not what you're told they should be. And that is both your curse and your greatest strength. This journey will test you. You will lose people. You will question everything. You will feel the weight of walking alone. But through every stage, disillusionment, detachment, and quiet mastery, you are becoming something rare, a man who cannot be controlled, manipulated, or easily understood. That's what makes you a Sigma, and that's why your path, no matter how difficult, is worth every step. Number 1, the awakening of isolation. Before a Sigma male understands who he truly is, he first experiences something unsettling, a growing sense of disconnect. He watches the world around him, trying to make sense of why people crave validation, why they perform for approval, why they exhaust themselves trying to fit into a system that feels meaningless. At first he tries to follow along. He plays the game, engages in social norms, and does what's expected, but something never quite clicks. The conversations feel empty, the social rules feel forced, and the need for constant approval seems exhausting. He watches people mold themselves to fit in, watching their identities shift just to be accepted, and something inside him resists. This is but a bit where the inner battle begins. He wonders if something is wrong with him. Why doesn't he crave attention like others? Why does he find small talk pointless? Why does he feel more alive in his own company than in a crowded room? The world tells him he should want the things everyone else wants: status, group belonging, a constant audience, but he doesn't. Then the realization hits. He's not broken. He's just wired differently. That disconnect he once questioned, it's not a flaw, it's a sign. It's proof that he was never meant to follow the herd. He wasn't built to perform, to seek approval, or to trade his authenticity for a seat at someone else's table. His mind operates outside the usual social framework, and instead of fearing that difference, he begins to embrace it. This is where his transformation begins. Instead of forcing himself to engage in shallow interactions, he pulls away. Instead of chasing validation, he starts building himself. The isolation he once feared turns into his greatest weapon. Because while others exhaust themselves maintaining an illusion, he sharpens his mind, masters his emotions, and learns to operate in a way that few can match. This is the awakening of isolation, where a Sigma male stops questioning his nature and starts using it, where he steps away from the world's expectations and into his own power. Number 2, the burning bridges stage. There comes a moment in every Sigma male's journey when he realizes he's been giving too much to the wrong people. People who drained his energy, manipulated his kindness, or stuck around simply because he never pushed them away. But once this realization hits, there is no hesitation. He walks away, and when he does it without looking back. This isn't about being dramatic. It's not some emotional outburst or a cry for attention. It's about survival. A Sigma male values his peace more than he values keeping up appearances. The second he recognizes someone as toxic, fake, or manipulative, they're done. There are no warnings, no second chances, no long-winded explanations. Just silence and then absence. And that silence is deafening. People who once had access to his energy, time, and presence suddenly find themselves shut out, and it confuses them. They don't understand why the door was closed so abruptly, why someone who used to be so calm, so reliable, so present is now completely unreachable. They will demand explanations. They will try to guilt him, to paint him as cold or heartless. They will say he changed, but what they really mean is they lost control over him. But here's the thing. A Sigma male doesn't owe anyone closure. He doesn't engage in endless back and forth arguments, doesn't explain himself to those who don't deserve it, and doesn't entertain people who refuse to see their own toxicity. He simply removes himself, and that by itself is enough. This stage is brutal, but it's necessary, because by cutting these ties, he makes room for something greater, his own growth. No longer weighed down by toxic connections, he becomes sharper, stronger, more focused. And by the time people realize what they lost, he's already moved on. Number 3, the reverse hustle epiphany. For most of his life, the Sigma male believes in the idea of working smarter, not harder. He optimizes his time, refines his skills, and outthinks the competition. But then, a deeper realization hits him. Even working smarter still means he's working. His survival is still tied to effort, deadlines, and output. He's still part of a system where his time is being traded for money, status, or security, and that doesn't sit right with him. This is where the reverse hustle epiphany kicks in. He realizes that true freedom doesn't come from outworking or outsmarting others. It comes from detaching survival from labor. Instead of working for money, he starts making money work for him. Instead of chasing endless opportunities, he builds systems that bring results with minimal effort. It's not about laziness, it's about leverage. This is when he starts making ruthless decisions. He stops selling his time and starts creating things that generate value, whether he's present or not. He invests, whether in knowledge, assets, or systems, that allow him to step away while his life continues to flow. This shift changes everything. He no longer feels the need to prove himself through work. He's done with burnout, with grinding for status, with chasing the illusion of success that keeps most people trapped. Instead, he starts designing life on his terms. Some call it luck. Others don't understand how he seems so calm, so unbothered while they're drowning in responsibilities. But they don't see what he sees. The game isn't about working harder or smarter. It's about exiting the cycle entirely. And when he masters this, he steps into a level of freedom that most will never experience. Number 4, the unlearning phase. From a young age, the Sigma male is fed the same script as everyone else. Work hard, follow the rules, never give up. Hustle culture glorifies struggle, obedience is rewarded, and persistence, no matter the cost, is seen as noble. And for a while he believes it. He grinds, he sacrifices. He plays by the book, thinking that if he just pushes hard enough, he'll eventually make it. But then something shifts. The cracks in the system start to show. He sees people who work themselves to exhaustion with nothing to show for it. He watches rule followers get passed over by those who bend or break the rules. He notices that never giving up often traps people in pointless struggles, sinking years into dead-end jobs, toxic relationships, and systems that were never designed to benefit them. And then it clicks. Most of what he was taught wasn't designed to help him, it was designed to control him. This is where the unlearning begins. He starts questioning everything. Who created these rules? Who actually benefits from them? And most importantly, do they even make sense for him? He lets go of the obsession with non-stop grinding and replaces it with efficiency. He stops blindly following the rules and starts playing by his own. He ditches the idea that quitting is failure and instead sees it as strategic redirection. This phase is both freeing and unsettling. It forces him to step away from the familiar, to rebuild his mindset from scratch. But once he breaks free from the conditioning, there's no going back. While others remain trapped, he moves differently. He's no longer a pawn in someone else's game. He is the one setting the rules now. Number 5, the people start copying stage. At first they dismissed him, called him distant, weird, or too serious. They couldn't understand him, so they judged him. But then something changed. The same people who once questioned his choices started imitating them. They noticed the way he moves in silence but commands attention. The way he doesn't chase validation, yet people respect him more than those who do. The way he builds himself up without needing approval. Suddenly they start borrowing his phrases, mirroring his confidence, even adopting his mindset. Some try to dress like him, speak like him, or make decisions the way he does. But here's the catch. He sees right through it. True independence cannot be faked. They can copy the way he walks, but they'll never carry the same energy. They can mimic his words, but they lack the depth behind them. They can try to detach like he does, but it's performative, not real. Because while they were busy pretending to be him, he was busy evolving. He never stays the same person for long, and this is where the gap widens. While they're still trying to master his last phase, he's already 10 steps ahead. They're rehearsing a script while he's writing the next chapter. He doesn't need to call them out. He doesn't care. He knows imitation is the highest form of flattery. but it's also the biggest sign that they still don't get it. Because the essence of being a Sigma male isn't about acting independent. It's about actually being free. And that's something you can't copy. You have to earn it. Number 6, the why do I even bother phase. At some point, the Sigma male hits a wall. He looks around and sees a world obsessed with surface-level distractions, mindless social games, and empty conversations. He's tired of dealing with people who don't think for themselves, tired of being misunderstood, tired of trying to engage with a world that seems designed for someone else. And then the question hits him. Why do I even bother? This isn't a moment of sadness. It's a moment of brutal clarity. He starts wondering if it would be easier to just disappear, to withdraw completely, no more small talk, no more pointless interactions, no more pretending to care about things that don't matter. For a while he leans into isolation. He limits contact, rejects obligations, and stops explaining himself. And in that solitude, something becomes crystal clear. It's not the world he hates, it's the noise. He doesn't despise people, he just refuses to play by their shallow rules. He doesn't reject society, he just won't lose himself in it. And so instead of fully disconnecting, he redefines his existence. He finds a middle ground, not completely cut off, but never fully immersed either. He interacts on his terms, engages only where it matters, and learns to filter out the nonsense. He doesn't isolate himself because he's afraid of the world. He distances himself because he values his peace. This phase changes him permanently. He stops explaining his choices, stops feeling guilty for needing space, stops expecting people to understand his way of life. And from that moment on, he moves differently. Not because he's bitter, not because he's angry, but because he knows the world will never make space for him, so he creates his own. Number 7, the unintentional intimidation phase. At some point, the Sigma male notices something strange. People start acting differently around him. It's not because he's doing anything extreme. He's not loud, aggressive, or openly confrontational. He's just there, silent, observing, seeing everything. And that's what unnerves people the most. His ability to hold eye contact without flinching, his calm and calculated demeanor, and his refusal to play along with social pretenses. All of it makes people uneasy. They don't know what he's thinking, and that terrifies them. Most people are used to others seeking validation, laughing at the right moments and following the invisible script of social interaction. But the Sigma, he doesn't play along, he doesn't fake smiles. He doesn't fill silences with meaningless words. He simply exists, fully present, fully aware, and that's enough to make people uncomfortable. They start projecting their insecurities onto him. Why is he so quiet? He must think he's better than us. He barely reacts. He's probably judging everyone. He's too intense. Something's off about him. In reality, he's just detached from the nonsense. He isn't looking down on anyone. He simply refuses to perform for approval. But because most people rely on validation to feel comfortable, his indifference feels like a threat. At first, he might try to soften his presence to make people feel at ease, but eventually he stops caring. He realizes that their discomfort is their problem, not his. If they feel exposed in his presence, it's because they have something to hide. From this moment on, he owns his presence. He doesn't shrink himself to make others comfortable. He doesn't apologize for being intense. He lets the weak feel intimidated, because deep down, they know he sees through them. Number 8, the transformation of loneliness into power. At first, loneliness felt like a curse. The Sigma male spent years feeling like an outsider, wondering why he couldn't connect the way others did. He watched people thrive in social groups, feeding off attention, validation, and constant noise. Meanwhile, he existed in silence, observing from the sidelines. But then, something shifted. He stopped seeing solitude as isolation and started seeing it as an advantage. While others drowned in distractions, he built himself in the dark. He read, learned, experimented, failed, and refined. He sharpened his mind while everyone else was busy numbing theirs. While they chased social status, he chased mastery. Loneliness no longer felt empty, it felt powerful. He realized that every great thinker, every innovator, every true leader had once stood alone. They weren't understood, they weren't celebrated, they were rejected until the world saw what they had become, and that's exactly what happens to him. While others waste years blending in, he spends his time evolving. By the time they realize what he's been doing, he's already 10 steps ahead. His mind is sharper, his confidence is unshakable, his skills are undeniable. Now when he walks into a room, people feel his presence. Not because he's loud, not because he demands attention, but because he carries the weight of someone who built himself from nothing. This is when he understands. Loneliness was never his enemy. It was his greatest weapon. Number 9, the zero-tolerance policy implementation. There comes a point where the Sigma male stops entertaining nonsense altogether. It's not a conscious decision at first, it happens gradually, like a slow-burning realization that his time, energy and peace are worth more than people's expectations. At first he used to explain himself. He'd clarify misunderstandings, give people second chances and tolerate mediocrity out of politeness. But over time he sees the pattern. Most people don't actually listen, they just want access to his energy, so he cuts them off. The phrase, "I don't have time for this," stops being something he says. It becomes how he lives. Energy vampires, manipulators, and people who thrive on chaos are shut down instantly. There are no debates, no drawn-out explanations, just a simple shift where they realize they no longer have access to him. And it's not just people, this mindset bleeds into every aspect of his life. The shift is so drastic that people start calling him cold or arrogant, but he doesn't care. They were benefiting from his patience, not respecting it. Now his life is cleaner, sharper, and more focused than ever. He operates with ruthless efficiency, and his inner peace is protected at all costs. He doesn't explain himself anymore because the truth is simple. He just doesn't have time for anything that doesn't serve his evolution. Number 10, the "I don't need closure" moment. At some point, the Sigma male reaches a breaking point, but not in the way most people expect. He stops waiting. No more waiting for apologies that will never come. No more expecting explanations from people who don't even understand themselves. No more hoping for a clean ending wrapped up in a nice, neat bow. He realizes something that most people spend a lifetime avoiding. Closure isn't given, it's made. This moment is liberating because it means he's no longer emotionally tied to unfinished stories. He no longer needs a conversation, a confession, or a final scene to move forward. He simply decides to be done. This confuses people. They expect closure to be a drawn-out process filled with dramatic conversations and mutual understanding. But the Sigma male operates differently. He doesn't need validation or permission to let go. Someone ghosts him, he moves on. A relationship ends with unanswered questions. He accepts it. A friend betrays him. He cuts ties without looking back. It's not coldness, it's clarity. He understands that most people don't even have the emotional intelligence to explain why they did what they did. Waiting for them to provide closure is like waiting for a broken clock to tell the right time. It's pointless. So he frees himself, faster than most people can comprehend. This ability gives him a level of emotional independence that few ever achieve. While others stay stuck in cycles of resentment, confusion, and unfinished business, he's already moved forward. And the best part? By refusing to cling to the past, he gains the ultimate power, the ability to create his own peace on his own terms. Number 11, the ruthless efficiency shift. There comes a moment when the Sigma male stops tolerating inefficiency, brutally and completely. He's always been independent, always preferred depth over distraction, but now he refines his every move. He stops engaging in anything that drains him without purpose. Small talk, gone, mindless debates, ignored, chasing relationships that don't add value, a thing of the past. At first, this shift feels aggressive, almost ruthless. But the truth is, it's survival. He sees how most people leak energy everywhere, arguing about things that don't matter, maintaining fake friendships, staying in situations that serve no purpose. He refuses to live like that. Instead, he becomes surgical. Every action must have meaning. Every conversation must hold substance. Every commitment must lead somewhere worthwhile. If it doesn't, it's cut off without hesitation. This shift doesn't make him cold, it makes him efficient. People notice the change. They call him distant, detached, too serious, but he isn't bothered. He isn't here to entertain, he's here to evolve. He learns how to work smarter, not just harder. He stops grinding for the sake of grinding and starts focusing on leverage, how to get the highest impact with the least wasted effort. He refines his circle, protecting his time like it's the most valuable currency, because it is. This phase is what separates him from the rest. While others spread themselves thin, he operates with laser focus. While they chase approval, he moves with purpose. And from this moment on, his time, energy, and attention belong only to what truly matters. The final evolution, owning who you are. By now you've probably realized something. The Sigma male's journey isn't for the weak. It's not a straight path, and it's not something most people will ever understand. You've gone through confusion, disillusionment, ruthless self-examination, and a complete rewiring of how you see the world. You've burned bridges, outgrown people, and walked away from places that no longer fit you. And yet, through all of it, you didn't lose yourself. You found yourself. This isn't about being better than anyone else. It's about being the most unapologetic, undiluted version of you. Society expects people to conform, to pick a role and play by the rules, but you've proven that real power lies in rejecting those limits. Some will admire you. Others will misunderstand you. A few will try to copy you, thinking they can shortcut their way to strength. Let them. You don't need their validation, and you sure as hell don't need their permission. Your journey is yours alone, and that's what makes it powerful. Keep evolving, keep questioning, keep refining yourself. The world will try to pull you into its chaos, but you know better. You don't get lost in the noise. You move in silence, making waves where it matters. And that right there is what makes you unstoppable.